Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Don't Want to Wait Your Turn? Now you wait 10 minutes. This happened to me last night. I got in my car to pick up my girlfriend and my tire pressure light came on. I have a 12V air compressor in my backseat, but it's loud and fills sort of slowly, so I opted to drive to the local Wawa. For those who don't have Wawa, it's like if 7-Eleven got sober and went to college. Wawa's air pumps are free to use, which usually means there are at least a few cars lined up, but when I pulled in there was only one other car. Score! I pulled behind the guy filling his tires and an older gentleman in a BMW pulled in behind me. After about 3 minutes, a woman in a brand new Lexus pulls up directly next to me and puts her window down. I only have to fill one tire. Do you mind if I go in front of you? She asked. I said, actually I do, we've been waiting here for a little bit, sorry. She muttered something while rolling her window up and I put up mine. About a minute later the guy at the pump was done. He backs up and before I can even put my car in gear, Lexus woman pulls her car in front of mine diagonally, blocking me from pulling into the spot, and then pulls straight in after the first guy has moved. She climbs out of her car and gives me the most infuriating little wave. At this point my anger gives way to a ninja-like calm, and I know exactly what must be done. I pull my car forward and stop approximately 6 inches from her rear bumper. The air pump is in the corner of the lot, so Lexus woman has a curb in front of her, a curb to her right where the pump is, an open spot to her left, and now my dirty butt car right behind her brand new one. She is busy filling her tire and doesn't notice that I've pulled right up to her car. I step out of my car, grab my air compressor from the back seat and start setting it up to fill my tire. Mr. BMW, who has remained completely still and silent, sees what I'm doing and asks if I can fill his tires too. I say, of course, and motion for him to park in the empty spot to Lexus lady's left. As soon as he pulls in she notices what's happening and starts yelling. I flip on my air compressor and begin filling my tire, her cries drowned out by the sound of 250 psi of justice. She comes and stands in front of me, face beet red and little flecks of spittle popping out from between her cigarette teeth as she calls me all sorts of names. I calmly say, ma'am, I only have one tire to fill. You don't mind, do you? Mr. BMW is absolutely loving this, and as I finish my tire and move to fill his she starts up again. You motherduckers, ducking piece of crap buttholes etc. I finish Mr. BMW's tire and he thanks me for my help, climbs in his car and pulls away grinning. I wrap my compressor up nicely, pick a good song, and set my climate control to a balmy 82 degrees, all while Lexus lady is trapped in front of me. I calmly back up, give her a little wave, and drive off into the night. The next one is titled, Take My Parking Spot? What goes around comes around. This may be the pettiest thing I have ever done. So in my city there is a pub that's attached to a donut shop that serves the best donuts in the city, which always causes a long line. Because it's attached to a pub, it doesn't close shop until 9 p.m. as there is a solid flow of business rolling in. Anyway, my girlfriend and I get a serious hankering for some snacks, so we decide to head to the donut shop and arrive out around 8:30 p.m. by car. Now, there are only 3 parallel parking spots a little up the street from the place, and they are all 15-minute spots which are usually full. We see up the street that, count our lucky stars, a spot is free. My girlfriend pulls a little ahead of the car in front of the spot, turns on her indicator, and begins backing into parking spot when this little white Vespa driving behind us whips into the spot. I roll down our window and call out to the driver, excuse me, we were just backing in. The driver seems to be a pretty university student who shrugs her shoulders and calls out to me, sorry, first come first serve, while her and her friend share a good laugh. My girlfriend suggests we just get donuts another time, and I tell her she can drop me off here, I'll buy the donuts since I know what she likes, and she can loop around. She agrees, and I pop out of the car, past the little white Vespa where the girls are still gathering their things, and head to the shop. As always, the line is super long for donuts, and since this is the last batch, the donuts are slim pickings. The girls are behind me looking at the 5 or so different flavors that are left, talking about which ones are best and which they haven't had yet. I hear one of them jokingly mention, "Thank God we got a parking spot," and they burst out laughing. I get to the front of the line, and when asked for my order, request 2 dozen donuts, which is every last one remaining. The girls behind me didn't listen to what I ordered, but eyebrows of confusion started to form on their faces, and they slowly saw each donut loaded into the boxes and their options dwindle. One of them, the driver, in desperation asked the baker who was loading them in, "What, you're not even gonna save a few for us though?" To which I turned around and said, "Sorry, first come first serve." She honestly looked like she just simultaneously solved a movie mystery. It's difficult to put into words, but truly an expression I can never forget. Best donuts I ever tasted, and enjoyed by the rest of my office the next morning. The next one is titled, "I put a fake note on a Corvette's windshield that read, 'Sorry I hit your car, you probably won't even notice the damage,' because it was taking up 4 spots." So title is fairly self-explanatory, but I'll elaborate. I was trying to find a parking spot at my university. The lot was notoriously crowded, but my campus didn't have a lot of options. While searching, I saw a Corvette taking up 4 prime spots near the front of the lot. After about 10 minutes of waiting, looking for a spot, one opened up towards the back of the lot. Furious at the nerve of the driver being so inconsiderate, I wrote a note saying, "Sorry I hit your car, you probably won't even notice the damage," and left it on their windshield. When I got out of class and was headed back to my car, I saw a very stereotypical college-aged Corvette owner frantically searching their vehicle while yelling into their phone. I don't know who they were talking to, but I feel bad for them having to deal with this person. The next one is titled, "Karen called the police to claim that I physically hit her with my car in the Costco parking lot. I have a dash cam." Title basically says it all. I have an inconspicuous dash cam on my car, because I live the daily hazard of driving in the city. Yesterday, a woman walked out in front of my car from the side, completely disregarding the moving vehicle and the fact that I don't know, maybe I didn't ducking see her. I stopped more than 15 feet from her, but came to a screeching halt because it scared the duck out of me. She came up and banged on my window. I shouldn't have engaged at all, but I cracked it and apologized for scaring her, then started to drive off. She continued beating on the side of my car and screaming at me. Chased me down to the parking spot and screamed that she was calling the police. I hung out, not saying anything until they arrived. I gave them my info, showed them the dash cam footage, and was promptly dismissed to go about my day. Justice enough for me, though I do wish I knew what happened to her. The next one is titled, "Neighbor threatens to sue me for something ridiculous, so I take action first." I own a twin home by myself. The other side of the twin home is rented by 3 guys in their early 30s. Earlier this year, there was an incident where one of the roommates ruined my basement carpet by leaving his sump pump hose laid against my house. It was an honest mistake, but he refuses to pay for the damages, so a court case is ultimately upcoming, but I have yet to file the paperwork for it. So as you can imagine, things are a little tense between us at the moment. Now that that's out of the way, on to the story. This past weekend, a friend of mine ran into one of the roommates that lives next to me. Neither of them realized that they knew me, but after a while, they found out that they both knew me. My neighbor then went off, saying I'm that neighbor from hell because I plan on taking the other roommate to court to recover my costs for the basement. He said that if I do go through with the lawsuit, that the homeowner they rent from is going to sue me back, claiming the deck on my house is not up to code. To the best of my knowledge, you can't sue someone for that since it's not causing you any financial harm, and they're not the building police. However, just in case something did come about, I checked property records and verified that all permits and inspections were properly done for my deck, so I'm covered. But this got me thinking. Last summer, my neighbors built their deck. So I checked with the city, and discovered that no permits were filed for it. So guess who's going to be getting a visit from the city building inspector later this week? Ultimately, it may result in them having to tear it down completely, but more likely is that they'll just have to pay a fine. The next one is titled, "Stupid Woman Bests Water Department Workers." My ex-husband and I bought our home from his parents. They had the house built in the 50s. For years, father-in-law wanted to install a shut-off valve in the utility room to, shut off the water to the whole house to do some repairs. Plumber told him it would cost a large amount of money because they could not find the shut-off from the city water main at the street, the Buffalo Box, aka water main shut-off valve. Since the Buffalo Box was mere, they would have to freeze the pipes to stop the water before installing the shut-off valve. It was an expensive process to freeze the pipes, so it never got done. When we bought the house, we decided to get the shut-off valve installed. We called the water department and they sent 2 workers to shut off the water. When they arrived, I explained the problem. They went out to the front yard, walked around a bit and told me there was nothing they could do for me. According to the 2 workers, it was my problem that they could not find the buffalo box and that I should call a plumber to dig up my front yard, sidewalk, and city easement to find my buffalo box. Well, I have a background in residential real estate construction and I was familiar with how water mains and buffalo boxes are installed, and I told them it was the city's issue, as they were responsible for the buffalo box, not the homeowners. According to these guys, as a woman, I did not know what I was talking about and they left. They were incredibly rude about it, but peons like these think they can get away with being rude to an ignorant woman like me. Fast forward to a year or so later. I get a call from the city manager asking why I hadn't paid my water bill for over a year. I told him that I wanted to pay my water bill, but I wanted them to first turn off my water. He was a bit taken aback that I wanted them to turn off the water. So, I explained what the city workers told me about locating the buffalo box and their attitude about women not understanding those type of things. I also told him that if the city could not turn off my water, I would be happy to have free water forever, because I would never pay another bill. We had a nice long chat about the situation and he said that he would resolve my concerns. The next day, these same 2 guys show up at my house with some digging equipment and spend the whole day digging up the easement and the sidewalk. Their attitudes were rather somber, because the city manager told me he was going to give them a talking to about how they mishandled the situation. I even got an apology. They found the buffalo box under the city-owned sidewalk. They fixed the buffalo box so it would be accessible and came the next day to fix the sidewalk. They asked if I wanted the water turned off, declined, and I told them I would have my plumber take care of it when we had him install the interior shut-off valve. And then I paid the water bill. The next one is titled, Shitty Server Demands a Better Tip. A couple months back, my boyfriend and I went out for drinks one night at this cool little speakeasy in Montreal. It's actually quite an interesting place. You come in through a nondescript entrance and the place has a really nice vibe going on once you get inside. Note, this is one of those bars where the server comes to your table and serves the drinks rather than one where you order at the bar and take the drinks back yourself. We were seated at our table by the server. We ordered a couple cocktails. And then a couple more, and then a couple more after that. Each time we had to order, my boyfriend or I would have to go fetch the server, so he would take our order or go up to the bar, order, and then bring the drinks back ourselves. Then, when it came time for the bill, I went up again so he would come to our table. He came and thought we were going to order again despite me clearly asking for the bill when I went up. So, he went back to get the card machine and it was another 10 minutes before he was back. At this point, I was quite ticked off at the not-so-great service and was debating whether or not I should tip him. The screen had an option for 10%, 15%, 20% or other. I decided to just leave 10% as I wanted to avoid an argument with the server. Montreal service employees are pretty damn notorious when it comes to the expectation of tips. Now, he prints out the receipt and takes a look at it and sees I left 10%. He then asks if we had a nice evening, to which my boyfriend responded that we did. We both thought it was just a standard question servers ask, so we didn't bother telling him about the poor service received, especially because it wouldn't really make a difference at this point. The guy then says, "Oh, well, if you had such a nice time, then you should have left at least a 15% tip. Because, in Canada, it's customary to leave a minimum 15% when the service is good." I'm guessing the reason he felt the need to outline that's how it is in Canada is because I'm a brown guy. Now comes the petty part. I responded, "Oh, I didn't know, why don't you cancel this bill and redo it so I can tip you properly?" He said, "Sure thing, just give me a second because the manager has to approve bill cancellations." Again, we waited a good 10 minutes for him to come back with the new bill. I was happy to wait, though, because once he came back, I put in the PIN and then selected the other option for tip and left him 0%. He printed out the receipt and his look of disbelief was well worth it. We got up and my white Canadian boyfriend said, "Our only tip for you is to give better service and not be so much of a butthole. In Canada, we don't really like buttholes." The next one is titled, "Divorce Me While I Am Sick?" That's fine, enjoy being single. Not my story, but a family friend's story. I knew this lovely German lady who I will call Heidi. Not real name. She was married to an Israeli man who I'll call Douche. Douche was a douche for a number of reasons. He worked with my dad in IT, who said he had a hero complex where he would cause disasters at work and then try to be the hero and save the day. We even suspect he caused a huge IT disaster at our national airport while he was working there. He was also really creepy. He creeped on my younger sister, calling her randomly and asking to pick her up. He was the exact opposite of his wife, who was lovely and sweet and charismatic, and I have no idea how they ended up together. Unfortunately, a while after we made friends with them, Heidi got very sick. Her colon stopped working, she almost died. Thankfully she was in a country with stellar healthcare who saved her life, but she found out she has Crohn's disease, and she had to get a colostomy bag. While she was recovering from her surgery, Douche announced he wanted to divorce. His words were, and I quote, "I didn't marry a sick woman. Ducking prick." He left her high and dry, and very soon was seeing someone else. He lost all the friends he had made in our country with his awful behavior. My family told him he was no longer welcome near us as we were there for Heidi. He finally fecked off back to Israel. Apparently he had got into quite a bit of debt while in my country, and skipped off to avoid paying. Good riddance, we all said. Heidi found her feet eventually. She took up photography, and went to university to study it. She did very well for herself, and lived a happy life free from Douche. After about a year, Douche contacted Heidi and she told us all about it. Apparently he was trying to sweet-talk her into going over to Israel to go through with the divorce proceedings. According to Heidi, your marital status is on your identity card in Israel, and it's one of the first things a girl asks to see when you go on a date. When the girls saw he was married on his card, they'd never go for a second date. So every time he'd call her asking when she was coming over, she'd put a huge grin on and reply, "Oh, I don't know, I'm not really in a position to fly with my condition and all. Maybe when I get better." She knew full well he won't set foot back here because his creditors were still looking for their money back. She would just relish in the knowledge that he was getting rejected by all those women he was pursuing in Israel while she chilled with us having a great time. Heidi is doing much better now. She went back to Germany, though still visits my family and her friends from time to time. She's still her awesome self. I don't know what Douche is up to now, but I suspect after all these years he is still a douche. The next one is titled, "A lady almost hit the front of my car trying to pull into a parking spot I was turning into, so I just sat there. So I'm at Costco, in need of dog food, and it's ridiculously busy for a Monday. Barely any parking spots until I spot one at the end of the lot. I make my way down the aisle, and am about to turn into the parking spot when a lady runs over the curb and almost hits me to take the spot. Thankfully I tapped my brakes in time or she would have taken off my bumper. I look up and she is shaking her head and wagging her finger in a no motion at me. What the hell? I was like, okay, I'll just wait for her to back up since I'm obviously turning into the spot. She doesn't. My girlfriend is with me and was upset the lady wasn't budging. I gave her my Costco card and just sat in the aisle in a face-off with this lady. She goes inside, gets the dog food, comes back out, and loads up the car. She then pushes the cart into the spot we were waiting for and hops in the car. The look on the woman's face was enough to give me satisfaction for a week. She had to get out and move the cart so she could park once I reversed through the entire aisle. Worth it. The last one is titled, "I cut my lawn in random directions because it makes my neighbor crazy." Neighbor is a retired 70-something former preacher or pastor or whatever. He's also a judgmental prick who, despite not living in a neighborhood with an hoa, makes weekly rounds through the neighborhood looking for any minor code violations, things like flowers that are overhanging onto the sidewalk by an inch or two, etc. He can report to the city to get the owners fined. He mows his lawn twice per day during the summer and has a bed of green that would make Hank Hill cream himself. I take pride in my yard, but it's 70% native plants and wildflowers with a small patch of grass in the front. I don't water the grass because pouring water on the ground seems stupid to me, but it, along with a healthy mix of other stuff, comes in pretty full and there aren't any bare spots anyway. I mow every 5 days, less if we're in a dry spell and it grows slower. Anyway, when I get out there, I cut all the grass, but with a focus toward leaving a path that is as baffling as possible. Sometimes I will attempt a checkerboard and then veer off into spirals, other times I will approach with an even more abstract eye. The grass doesn't seem to mind, and I enjoy the challenge of thinking of new ways to traverse the lawn. Today I saw my neighbor standing out front with his duck-up grandson that got sent to live with him for some reason. He was complaining to him about something, throwing his hands up in the air, clearly very exasperated. Then he gestured toward my lawn and then made a little spiral gesture while contorting his face in disgust. I don't know exactly what he said, but I imagine he was lecturing him about how if he didn't get his life together he'd end up like me, the neighbor with the weird lawn. Small victories, you know. Thanks for listening.